Let's start creating control objects for the character's legs. We'll start by making the main control for the leg. We can use a box control curve for that. So we'll go ahead and create one, and notice how quickly we're able to do that now using these meld buttons. We want to make sure that its pivot is going to be corrected. So we'll actually have that aligned with our left ankle joint, which is the same pivot as our IK handle. And we'll want to do that so no skipping occurs or flipping at all as we tie in our constraints. So if we were to hide our model, we'll go to our Move tool with this box selected, hold V, and just snap this right to the pivot where we'd like the pivot to be. Great, so now that that's done, we can bring back our model and work on reshaping this. So let's go to our side view, and we'll use our component mode to do that. Okay, this is going to help us to very quickly reshape this while still maintaining our pivot. So we can select these bottom vertices and bring these up so that they're going to be planar with the origin of our grid. And if you like to really get specific, you can always hold X to snap to grid. Okay. Alright, so now that that's done, we can now go ahead and select these front vertices and bring these forward. Select the foretop actually, okay, and bring these down. And then we can bring in these back vertices and just work on conforming this really to the foot and the side view. You also want to make sure that your control objects are going to be easy to select, okay, no matter what the angle is. Alright, now going back to our perspective, it looks like we're going to need to bring in our points, so let's do that. So it conforms to this left foot. We'll even bring these out. Great. And then, just to get really nitpicky, we could probably even scale in these top 4 points. Alright, well now that that's done, coming out of component mode, we have our leg control. We can clean this up with freeze transformation. We could also go to our curve and rename this. We'll call this CC underscore L underscore leg 01. And CC stands for control curve. Alright, so now that this has been made, we're not going to scale this control at all. We won't even tie in the visibility to anything for this rig. So we could just go to our scale all the way to visibility, right click, and go down to lock and hide selected. We will be, however, adding a toe roll attribute, so we can do that now. With the foot selected, we can go to modify and go down to add attribute. Now, I like to start with a category name. So in this case, this category is going to be for foot controls. So we'll call it just that, foot underscore CTRLS, controls abbreviated. Okay, and again, making sure that we have clicked displayable, we'll hit OK. Notice we have this gray attribute, again, to serve well for a category name. So now we can add another attribute to this. We can go to modify, we can go to add attribute. Okay, and if you're going to add multiple attributes, you could always use add instead of hitting OK. Now we'll call this toe underscore roll, and we'll make it keyable, give it no limitation, and just hit OK. Alright, so now that that's made, we're ready to take this control and bring it to the right half of our character. So we'll just go ahead and hide the visibility of the character, duplicate this control curve, and snap it to the right half. Now we can go ahead and turn back on our the visibility. Great. And if you like, you can go to the front view and reshape this a little bit more, maybe moving these points, the points that make up this right control, so that they also conform, but this time to this foot. Okay, great. And now that that has been done, we'll want to clean this up. It's important that we clean up our control objects because that helps us to very quickly get back to our blind pose if we need to. So watch what happens if we were to just go to freeze transformations. We get an error. The reason why is because our scale attributes have been tied down, looking at our freeze transformation options. Now, if you ever run into this error, let's go ahead and look at something we could do to avoid this. If we go to our script editor and look at the script that was used to freeze our transformations, you can see that what we're going to be able to do is actually use this to just freeze the attributes that we like. So let's go ahead and just make sure that everything all the way from our rotate attribute is highlighted here. Okay, and now we can go ahead and middle mouse button click and drag this down to our script editor. Alright, so now that this has been done, we now have here a script that's going to allow us to just freeze our translation and rotation. So if we were to highlight this and press Control Enter, notice now no errors occur and we have this control cleaned up. So if you wanted to, you can go ahead and take this and add this to your shelf if you like, and then just label it so that you know that it's just to freeze, translate, and rotation. So we can middle mouse button click and drag this to our shelf. We can close this out now, our script editor. We can go to our shelf editor, scroll down to our last selection, and call this FTR for freeze, translate, rotate. And then go ahead and just save our shelf out. There we have it. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and work on renaming this. So that's going to be CC_R, and for the leg, that's going to be 01. Now that it's relabeled, we can work on recoloring these objects as well. I like to use different colors for control objects because that helps the animator discern what object goes where or what object belongs to what. So for the left half, I like to use blue, and the right half, we can use red. So with the left selected, we can press Control A to get to our attribute editor. And we want to scroll down to our drawing overrides and go to Enable Overrides. If you can't see that, okay, we'll just, again, go into our first tab. We want to go to Display. Under Display, we go to Drawing Overrides, and then we should find Enable Override. So we'll want to check that on and switch our color. So we'll switch it to a blue. And then for the right side, we'll check on Enable Overrides. It should automatically toggle to the right section, and we'll switch this to a red. Okay, great. So now that that has been done, let's go ahead and work on our connections here. So that's simply going to be taking this object and point constraining our IK handle to it. So with the object selected, we can go to just our select tool and shift select our IK handle, go to constrain, go to point constrain, and notice the options are set to default. Okay, so we'll just hit add. Alright, that works out just fine for us. Now, again, with just our control object selected, we'll shift select our bone now to control the rotation of it. We don't want any rotating occurring as we, let's say, move our hip down. See what's happening? We want to maintain a nice foot plant. So for this, we'll select our control, we'll shift select our bone, we'll go to constrain, orient constrain this time, and we'll go to the options here, can make sure that they're going to be reset, and we'll also turn on maintain offset so no flipping occurs, and we'll hit add. So now, notice, if we were to select our control and rotate this, we can control the rotation. If we move this around, notice that's going to move just fine. And now if we were to ever move our hip down, notice there's going to be no rotating happening out of that ankle bone. So we can have a nice foot plant. Okay, great. So from here we can go ahead and work on those connections for the right half. With the control object selected, again, we can start by shift selecting the right IK handle, go to constrain, point constrain, select it again, shift select the bone, go to constrain, orient constrain. Great, and then we'll test it out. We always want to test out the objects that we build, and that's just fine. Also, something to note, we would want to make sure that sticky is turned on. Okay, this is another reason why, so that our IK handle will stay planted to the control object. Alrighty, well, that's going to finish up this lesson. We have our knee controls to build, and we also have our connections to do for the toe roll. So in the next lesson, we'll just continue setting up our leg controls.